Okay, so today's notes will be on the law of sines, which you will use when you do not have a right triangle. You need to find a missing side or a missing angle. So the law of sines you will use with non-right triangles, and you're given angle side angles, or side A. So it's possible to have two answers given side A, and we'll get to an example later on in the notes. So one thing you have to remember is this formula, law of sines, right here. Make sure you take notes of this equation or formula. It says that the sine of angle A divided by A is the same as sine of angle B over B, which is going to be the same as sine C over C. So it's basically extended ratio. It's basically saying that a half will be equal to 2/4, and it's equal to 10 over 20. So the ratios are all the same because they're all going to be a half. That's just your algebraic basic example of law of sines. So remember that angle side. This is your angle side. Here is angle side. So remember that's angle side. So if you have those two angles in a given side that's non-included, you can use law of sines. Angle side angle. So here's angle side angle with the side included. So here's angle side angle. Or if you have side angle, and here is side angle. So here the angle is non-included. So here you will have two answers, or it's possible. Not always going to be two answers. So it's pretty straightforward, and again, you only use this with non-right triangles. So let's get right to the examples. This is something that is for side angle only. Okay, we're going to come back to this slide in a little bit. Okay, this is basically your rules for side angle only with law of sines. So again, we're going to come back to this slide when we need to use it for side angle. So I want to know the values of A and C, and I want to round to the nearest tenth. Here I have two angles and the non-included side, so I already tell you it's angle side, therefore I have to use the law of sines. So I'm going to write down the formula for law of sines. So I know it's the sine of A over A, it's the sine of B over B, and I know it's the sine of C over C. So I have everything labeled A, B, and C, so I'm just going to fill in everything. I know the sine of A, so it's going to be just substituting in. I know sine of angle A is going to be sine of 48. Side A is still A. I know that the sine of B will be 93, and side B, here's little b, is going to be 15. And then I know C. Now, don't forget how many degrees in a triangle. It's 180, so you're going to do 180 minus 93 minus 48, and you get 39. So I know angle C is 39 because 180 degrees in the triangle. So I know it's sine of 39 over C. So since I filled in all the information that I need to now pick one fraction that has everything filled in. So the only fraction that has everything filled in is sine 93 over 15. So I'm going to use this one. Sine of 93 over 15 and set it equal to a fraction that contains one variable. So I'm going to contain one variable with A, so I know that this is sine of 48 over A. Now it's a fraction equal to a fraction. It's called a proportion. So in order to solve this, I just cross multiply. So I know it's 15 sine 48 equals A sine 93, divide by sine 93, divide by sine 93. Now don't evaluate until the very end. So now you just got to use your calculator. So I know that A is equal to 15. Let me erase this here. 15 sine 48 divided by the sine of 93. So here you have to use your calculator. So I'm going to use my calculator and do 15 sine of 48, and I'm going to divide that by sine of 93, and I get 11.16. So A is approximately 11.16, but I want to nearest tenth, so it's 11.2. That's my answer. Now, that's only for A. Now I need to solve for C, because C also contains, or C is also a variable. So how do I solve for C? Again, I repeat the process using sine 93 over 15 and set it equal to the fraction that contains the C variable. So I still do the same thing, so it's sine of 93 over 15 equals the sine of 39 over C. So it's always going to be one fraction is completely filled in, the other fraction will contain one variable. When you set up that proportion, you cross multiply, so I have C sine of 93 equals sine of 39 times 15, divide by the sine of 93. Therefore, C equals 15 sine 39 over the sine of 93. And I use my calculator, and I do 15 times the sine of 93, and then I divide that by the sine of 93. And I get 9.5. And those are my answers. So there is A and there is C. So we'll do another example. I want the value of x and y to the nearest hundredth. Hundredths 2 decimals. Okay. So again, I'm just going to randomly label A, B, and C. I know I can find angle B right away by subtracting 63 and 71 from 180. And I get 46. So now I'm going to do my ratios for sine A, sine B, sine C. So I know it's sine of A over A, sine of B over B, sine of C over C. And again, this is also angle, angle, side. This is angle, angle, side. So if I have angle, angle, side, I know it's automatically law of sines. Substitute the values in. So I have sine of 63 over 18. So here's A. Opposite of angle A is little a. Here's little b. Here's little c. And I know that's going to be equal to the sine of 46 over y, which is the sine of 71 over x. Now I just need to set up a proportion, cross multiply, and solve. And again, I always use the fraction that contains both information filled in. So I have sine 63/18. That has no variables, so I'm going to use that as my starting ratio. Set it equal to a ratio that contains one variable. So I'm going to use sine 46 over y. I'm going to cross multiply and then divide. So I know that y is going to be 18 sine 46 over sine 63. So I'm going to use my calculator. So I do 18 times the sine of 46. And then I divide that by sine of 63. And I get 14.53. And again, I wanted nearest hundredths, which is 2 decimal places. So that's y. Now we need to solve for x. And again, to solve for x, I always use a fraction that has no variable. So that's sine 63 over 18. Set it equal to the fraction that contains one variable. In this case, it's going to be sine 71 over x. Cross multiply, divide. Therefore, x is equal to 18 sine 71 over sine 63. I did the cross multiplication and dividing in my head. Again, if you need instructions on how to do that, look at the previous example. Use my calculator. 18 sine 71 divide by sine of 63. And I get 19.10. And those are my answers for X and Y. So let's do another example. So in this case, I have a side angle. So this is side angle. So it's still law of sines. So this is law of sines still. So I'm going to label this A, B, and C. And now this is where we could have two answers. Why? Because it's side A. Now let's go back to the slide that I skipped over in the beginning of the video. So here's your rules for side angle with law of sines only. It is possible to have two answers with side angle if all of the information that I'm circling is true. So the only information known about the triangle is angle A and sides A and B. That is true in this case. Okay. So that is true in this case. I know angle A, I know side A and B. So here's angle A, and side B. So that is true. Now I need to know if angle A is acute. So is angle A less than 90 degrees? It is. Then I have to say, is the side A shorter than side B? So here is side A, here's side B. I need to know, is 6 less than 8? And that's true. Yes. Now I have to go to the last step. Is A greater than B times the sine of A? Now I need to check this part. Is A, which is 6, greater than 8 sine 40? So I is 6. What's 8 sine 40? 8 sine 40 is 5.14. 5.14. Is that indeed true? Yes, it is. So since all three of these are true, I'm going to have two possible answers. I'm going to show you how to get those two possible answers right now. So first thing, so we'll have two answers. I'll show you these two answers. Well, first of all, let's just solve it using law of sines, like we normally would. So I know it's sine of A over A, sine of B over B, and sine C over C. Let's fill in our information. So I know it's sine of 40 over 6. I know it's sine of X over 8, and that's it. And then I have sine of C over C. So I don't really have to worry about sine C over C. I am only going to use this ratio. So let's use this ratio equal to sine X 8 ratio. It's proportion and cross multiply and divide. So here we go. Let's zoom in a little bit. So let's zoom in. So I cross multiply here, and I have 8 sine 40 equals to 6 sine X, divide by 6, divide by 6. And I have what is 8 sine 40 over 6, which equals sine X. Now remember, I'm solving for an angle. In your calculators, to solve for an angle, you have to do the inverse. So I have to do sine inverse of my ratio. My ratio is 8 sine 40 over 6. and this will equal x. So going into my calculator, I have to do the inverse. And I do 8 sine 40 divide by 6. Oh, I got an error on my calculator because I did not enter it correctly. So again, I have to do it over again. So again, sine inverse. And I have 8, here we go, sine 40 over 6. And I get 58.98. Always round degrees to the nearest whole number, so x will equal 59 degrees. So that's my first answer. So going back over to what our second possible answer will be. So since I had true for all three criteria, my answer is going to be the inverse of the ratio, and it's going to be 180 minus the inverse of the ratio. So my second answer in this case will just be, so here's my first possible answer, and then my second possible answer will be 180 minus 59. So you do 180 minus 59, and you'll get 121. So those are your possible answers with side-side angle. And again, it's not always going to be two answers. Okay, you just have to make sure that these three criteria are true. If one of them is no, you're just going to have one answer. We'll do another example. So I'm going to create a triangle. So I'll give you, let's go with 62. Let's go with 8. And then let's go with 5. So here's A, here's B, here's C. So I have side-side angle. I'll zoom in. So it's side-side angle. So I know it's law of sines. So I know it's going to be, and I'm going to solve for, let's go with y and x. So I know it's going to be the sine of 62 over 8 equals the sine of x over 5 equals the sine of y over, we don't know this, so I'll just label it as z. I'm not solving for z, I just want x and y. So it's side-side angle, so I have to do my three criteria. Okay, I have to check for two answers. The first thing I have to do I have angle A in the side opposite of angle A? Yes. And do I have side B? Yes. So the first thing is yes. The second thing I need to check is angle A acute. Yes, it is. Angle is 62, less than 90, it's acute. 3. Next thing I need to check is side A. So I need to check is side A less than side B. So is side A less than side B? And this one is no. So I'm not going to have two answers. No, two answers. So here's a case where it's side-side angle and it's not two answers. Why? Because side A is not less than side B. So I can stop right there. So how do I solve it? I pick one ratio that has everything filled in, which is sine 62 over 8. So I have sine 62 over 8, and I set it equal to sine x over 5. Cross multiply. So I have 6 sine 62 equals 8 sine x, divide by 8, divide by 8. So I have sine x equals 6 sine 62 over 8. I'm solving for an angle. So you use an inverse in your calculator. So it's the sine inverse of the ratio, 6 sine 62 over 8. So here you got to use your calculator. So I go sine inverse, 6 sine 62 over 8. And I get 41.46. Round to the nearest whole number, and that is 41 degrees. So x is 41. Not going to have two answers because side A is not less than side B. I also wanted angle y, which is easy to get now that I have two angles in a triangle. The third, you just subtract from 180. So 180 minus 62 minus 41, and you get 77. And there you go. That's the law of sines. If you have any questions, please come up and see me, and please do the example problems in the notes that are listed online.